What's the difference getting a homeowner's permit?
Bob, did you sign in? Okay.
Yeah, you still inspect the pool. And then look at stuff.
2 minutes. We start right on time.
No permit wanted to do it.
2 minutes.
Sir, could you sign in, please?
I can see it.
Right behind you.
As long as I didn't
Thank you.
into the right of way.
Okay, this is another pre-blizzard meeting.
Yeah. Yeah, so they guaranteed every meeting we have a blizzard the next day.
Yeah, on to you.
James, you on for the invocation?
Yeah.
Good enough. Well, I think everybody's here, so it's 5:59, but is it okay if we start? All right, I'll call the April meeting of the West Dakota Water Development District to order. And the first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. So please stand. Flags behind you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please stay standing. We're going to have the invocation now. James?
Thank you, Lord, for this nice, peaceful, quiet room before the storm. I'm starting to think you're trying to tell us something. Seems every month you have a nice blizzard prepared for us. Although the crops will be nice and green in the spring, as long as farmers can plant and the fields aren't too wet. And then the summer isn't too dry and then kills them all out. So a little bit of evenness would be great this year. Let's have a nice, peaceful meeting full of good comments and questions, and that cool and calm heads prevail, and logic resides. Amen.
Thank you. Dan, would you call the roll, please?
Okay, roll call. Holt.
Present.
Bierke.
Here.
Driscoll. Here. Jovic.
Here.
Rollinger.
Here.
Williams.
Here.
Mack.
Here.
Bialotta.
Here.
Harris.
Here.
9 present. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. This agenda. I did note one thing that I saw on the minutes. I guess we're talking about the agenda now. Sorry. Is there any changes to the agenda?
Move to approve.
Motion on the floor for approval. Is there a second? Second by Dan Driscoll. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you.
Who made the motion?
Steve did. Seconded by Dan. Item number 5, conflict of interest. Is there any board members that have any conflicts of the items on the agenda this evening? If so, say so now. Seeing none, we'll move on then. Okay, now the approval of the minutes from the last meeting. I did have one correction tonight on sheet page 6. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down, they were talking about the stream gauges, and David's last name is Hannah, not Camp. Could you change that?
Okay, got it.
Are there any other changes?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
On page 9 of 29, immediately above the bold print, item number 16, where it says committee selected for looking at this longer-term administrative contract stuff. It has Bierke, Driscoll, Mack, and Rollinger, and I think I raised my hand on that, unless Thomas really wants to do that.
If you would like to take my position, that is fine with me. If we need an actual motion to change that, then I will step from that.
I don't think we had a motion. I think we just volunteered. So,
Mr. Chair,
yes.
during our last meeting, I listened to the whole meeting, and that was one of the things I brought up. It was Mr. Koss's name that was mentioned during the meeting minutes, and I just wanted to make sure you guys were both okay with making that change.
Yeah, no, I'm completely fine with that,
Okay.
as long as the rest of the board's okay with the change. So,
So the minutes need to be corrected? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
Any objections to the
Where's that
change?
again?
Pardon me?
It's page
Page 9.
immediately above bold type, line 16.
yeah.
Got it.
And a question for Mr. Mullally. Did you find the missing time there?
I did, I got those times and I'll note those in the minutes.
Move to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Wait. We still have discussion. I made the motion. You gotta go through the motion for a second.
Is there a second to the motion?
Yes.
Okay, seconded by Bob. Okay, now discussion.
I noticed that on agenda item 13, the only thing I got out of my mouth when I went through the whole thing was John Ferrero's name and Game Fish and Parks Department before we were interrupted for a break. And I was wondering, did you find, or could you give us an explanation of what actually went wrong with the recording between 13 and 14?
With the audio, operator error, that was my blunder. I killed it, and then when I started up again, I didn't do it right and didn't realize it, so I apologize.
Okay.
Anything else?
No.
Any other changes?
Who made that motion?
Steve made the motion, seconded by Bob.
So we could talk about it.
Is there any more discussion? Seeing none, I guess the motion is for approval of the minutes with the 2 changes. Is that right? All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 7 is the treasurer's report.
Okay, that's in your packet. Funds on hand, about $455,000. That's in the 2 accounts, checking and the savings. Projected revenue from the tax levy is going to be $200,000. And the admin budget, we're going to be sitting pretty good. We've spent $20,000. We budgeted $69,000, almost $70,000. And the projects budget, we budgeted $316,000. We've only spent about $23,000. Total year to date, we've spent about $41,000.
So that's, the 70,000 is what's remaining, right? 89 was the, according to this is the.
Yeah.
But, so there's about 70,000 remaining.
Yeah, according to the budget, so we're about a quarter in and we're
Okay, very good.
sitting pretty good. And then, nobody has any questions. The next page is just breaking it down by projects, and the number of interest might be our obligations for current projects is about $50,000 for this year, or for the projects we've had approved and still owe money on.
Any questions on the treasurer's report? Dan?
Just to clarify it for people in the audience that see it, whatnot, is our real bottom line for the year, the very bottom right corner, the remaining that we would project $293 remaining? That's on page 13, I guess.
Yes.
That's what where we would
Well,
expect to close out the year
right.
if no new expenditures, unplanned expenditures come up.
If we spent our budget, that's what we would have left.
Right. Yeah.
We're well behind what we were budgeting though, so
Okay.
that number's just
Right.
assuming that.
Yeah. Any other questions on the treasurer's report?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Bob.
Do we have a regular, regular reporting period we have it for most of our contracts, right, Dan? And, I mean, the USGS is always on time every quarter,
It just depends on the particular project. The School of Mines might be a little more uneven, for example.
Because the thing that was removed from the meeting minutes on the Game Fish and Parks Department is an expenditure of $150,000 that we just handed them a check, and then for the last 3 years they haven't paid attention to it and so forth. I think it's important that we always put that somewhere in our agreements, that they have a specific time frame for paying as they're working, rather than what we suffered with the bags of waste for that.
That was a memorandum of understanding that was, I guess it was considered the contract, I believe, in that case. I'm just looking at
Dan, I think, on that particular type of project where they're purchasing equipment is a little bit different than, like the school mines contracts where there's work in progress, and so they submit payments for progress on whatever project it is, versus actually purchasing a piece of equipment, which is what we did, and so they probably needed that money pretty much up front. I understand what you're saying, but I think there is a difference on the type of project that in terms of when the money is needed for the project.
I think it'd be useful somewhere down the road to discuss how we do that, so that we gather value for what we're doing, and then provide for the funding necessary. But it just seems that what Mr. Guerrero said during that audio part, and the reason I listened to the whole thing from last time, was that he, put it off, or it just didn't reach the level that he needed to pay attention to when it's our money that's been used for their project. So I just wanted to make sure that got into an electronic recorded system. Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, just one comment on some of the past experiences I've had with the East Dakota and other funding entities like us, is that it's on a reimbursement basis. So the entity that's receiving the funds will have to disperse their funds, and then they request reimbursement. So that might be something to consider.
Sure.
So then, if they buy equipment, then they may need a larger reimbursement than if they're just doing incremental progress on some kind of a research study.
Yeah, I don't think there's anybody on board here that
Nobody was
was here when we spent $150,000. So I don't know if they had a receipt from the company that made the dredge, or how that came about. But
from what I understood, they didn't even go out and purchase them.
yeah, there's nobody here that really is familiar with what happened on that.
I've been asked about it. I pulled the file on it, and there wasn't much there, just the minutes, and then there's like I said, a memorandum of understanding between various parties, Rapid City and us.
I think both of those comments are legitimate. We need to make sure that we...
capture in the minutes. That'd be
Yeah,
good.
okay. Any other discussion on that? Okay, do we have a motion to approve the treasurer's report?
I move. Go ahead. I'll second it.
Steve?
I'll move.
Okay, Bob's going to move to the second.
Okay, second.
Steve, second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Who made the motion?
Bob. Bob and Steve.
Okay, got it.
Okay, the next item, 8, is the South Dakota Rural Water Association's request for funding on the hydrovac. We've had this on the agenda for a while. We didn't act it on last time because some people would like to have a representative to answer any questions, so we appreciate you coming.
Can I introduce Mike?
So it's your floor.
Okay,
You have the
all
floor.
right. All right, well, Mike Moeller, who is a training specialist with South Dakota Association of Rural Water Systems, based out of the Spearfish office, is here today because their executive director wasn't able to travel with our imminent weather. So, Mike, I don't know if you had a few comments to make prior to maybe answering some questions for us.
Yeah, I'm sure this may answer a question or two, but.
Could you identify yourself for the record?
Okay, I'm Mike Muller of South Dakota Rural Water.
Okay, thank you.
We purchased a hydrovac. So we have one on each side of the state. If you don't know what hydrovacs are used for, they're used for potholing to find utilities. They're used to clean valve risers, used to clean curb stops. Basically anything that has to do with, excavating out of the ground or out of a pipe in the ground. It's just a big vacuum with a pressure washer is what it is. We don't have familiar with them. And we're looking for possible partial payback funding from West Dakota.
I did talk to you before the meeting. The question I asked was, in West Dakota Water Development's area, I mean, what type of water systems are you working with?
So, and as I answered before, basically any water system. If they have an EPA ID number, it can be a homeowners association, it can be a campground, it could be a city, it could be anything that takes care of a water system, has to report to the state, and has an EPA ID number. We can work for them, and we can use this equipment in their system to help them out.
I have one other question. So when you do work for these water systems, whoever it is, do you charge them a fee for using that piece of equipment?
So, if we use
And the other part of that was, does that cover the capital costs, or what does it cover?
That covers the replacement cost and any maintenance that needs to be done. So we charge $150 to clean 5 valve risers. That includes 5 valve risers. And then $25 per valve riser after that, with a total daily cap of $300. So I could spend 10 hours there and clean 60 valve risers for $300.
Is there any other questions? James, you have a question?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. What was the total cost on the machine?
The machine total cost was $18,500.
Okay. And where will the machine be used?
It will be used everywhere on the west side of the state.
Okay. Do you understand this district is only western Pennington? So how do I explain to Pennington County taxpayers that we're paying for Buell, Butte, and Meade County taxpayers' work?
Because it will be used in Pennington County. If they question it, it's used in Pennington County. I get the question that it could be used everywhere in western South Dakota, and it may not like that, but if we don't have it, it won't be used in Pennington County. Yes.
What percentage of the time? Oh, I'm sorry.
Do we need a motion on the table before we proceed further with our business?
We do.
If so, I'd be willing to make a motion that we would, entertain the contribution that they've requested.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Point of order, typically we do ask questions of the presenter before a motion is made.
I guess we can put a
Point of order.
We can put a motion on the table.
I also, Dan, point of order too, I think he's correct, but normally, before you have discussion, the items up front are items that are going to be voted on. And there should be, it says VAC funding and nothing else. There should be detailed information so everybody in the audience and everybody here knows exactly what we're talking about. Then somebody makes a motion to either approve or deny it, and then we follow with discussion. After that, later in the agenda, you have discussion items, which can't be voted on. They have to be discussed. So I'm looking at item number 8, wondering, what are we talking about?
It's in the packet.
There is something
Yeah,
that says
yeah.
detailed.
Yes, it's in the
Okay,
packet.
I'm sorry.
Details, that's why I'm asking questions.
Right, okay.
Yeah, it's on,
Okay, perfect.
yeah,
So,
it's on page 15.
but Dan's correct, you should have a motion up front that says we're going to approve or disapprove it, and then discussion follows, and then we vote. Otherwise, it's a discussion item and you don't vote on it.
Well, he made a motion. Is there a second to it?
I seconded.
Dan,
Who seconded it?
I did.
Nathan seconded. Okay, now discussion.
now discussion.
Sorry for the confusion.
That's all right. That's why I'm here.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. The small communities, maybe you could give some examples, and have they been approached as partial funders as well, as they might benefit, or no?
We don't try to approach communities to try to help fund any equipment needs we have, because we're supposed to be helping them. And we don't feel that it's right to ask for funding from like a small community when we're actually there to assist them. Would be the response I give to that.
I do have a question. Are these systems that you serve, are they members of the Rural Water Association?
Some are, some aren't.
Okay.
And Mike, can you tell us, have you used equipment out here since it was set up in Spearfish?
No, because it hasn't been really quite warm enough to use it. Ideally, when you use it, you want a little warmer weather so that there's no frost in the ground and everything's thawed out. If need be, and we needed to pothole down to find something in the wintertime, we could. Just one, you have to pick and choose your days, so because it has a pressure washer on it, you don't want to freeze that high pressure pump up because it's really cold out.
Nathan, another question?
Yes, getting back to Director Bialotta's question, what percentage of the use of this machine do you think would be in Pennington County?
25% maybe.
Okay.
James, you have another question?
Yeah, I have two more. You told us in your discussion that you do have a recruit cost as you bill customers for the use of the machine, which will provide for a newer machine when this one eventually breaks down or dies. What is the current economic status of South Dakota Rural Water Association? How much money do you guys have in the bank?
I honestly can't answer that because I don't know.
Because this is paid for in full, correct?
Yes, and we use funds from our equipment depreciation account
Correct.
to pay for it. So, and that account doesn't get much money put into it. I do know that. So when you take a chunk out of it, you really hurt yourself. And we're not trying to recoup all of it, just part of it.
Do you have one more question, James?
Yeah, and so the board approved $7,500 towards the purchase of the vac, but it cost almost $19,000. Where did the rest of the money come from? Is there a loan?
No, we took funding out of our equipment depreciation fund.
Okay,
Pay
so
for it. And the reason we did that, the vac is used. It has 40 hours on it. So it's basically like brand new. We got a brand new one for $27,000. We got it for $18,500. It was, we had either had to jump and get it or lose it. That's what was going to happen because it was a good deal.
So in short, the full 19 came from rural water. Part of it came from your general funds, part of it came from your equipment funds.
Yeah. And West River Water Development District out of Murdoch has also given us $7,500.
Okay.
I think that says that.
So
Yeah.
It's in there.
Yeah, it's in that. To read that, it's in there.
Yeah, the West River Board, right?
Any other thing? Anything else, James? Nathan?
So based on the percentage of use, and the purchase price, it looks like the purchase responsibility, if you will, for Pennington County would be about $5,000. Would you guys be amenable to taking something less than $7,500, like $5,000?
I can answer that with yes. I'm not the boss. I was asked to come here because my boss will be here.
Yep.
I don't think he'd be opposed to it because it's better than nothing. So to speak.
Can I when I was talking to Kurt at one time, you know, he said, yeah, this was a suggested amount equal to what West River contributed. So I would say no, they would be thankful for whatever amount we offer.
Nathan?
I just wanted to provide a comment. I'm normally very fiscally conservative. I don't like spending taxpayers' dollars frivolously and usually fight tooth and nail to try to prevent spending taxpayer dollars on things that I don't think we need. I've had a lot of experience with your organization. You guys do a great job. I think your organization is one that we should be supporting wholly. I think I've seen you guys in action, and like I said, I think you do a great job in the things that you do. I think in many cases it's like you were talking about cleaning. It's kind of yeoman's work. You do a lot of work. You get very little recognition for the things that you do. A lot of people don't hear about you guys and all the things that you do, all the ways that you help organizations out there. So from my perspective, I think this is a way that we can help them and say thank you. So I'm fully in support of spending $5,000 on this project. And if I could,
Probably need a substitute motion for that.
I would make a substitute motion that we fund it in that amount, $5,000.
Is there a second?
A second.
Second is from Linda. Any discussion on that? James?
I have a question. I'm looking at the South Dakota Rural Water Systems map, and it shows the only system in Pennington County you guys service is Rapid Valley. Does that sound accurate?
That map is rural water systems.
Okay.
It isn't, we service any water system. And it's just hard to build a map of every single water system in the
Sure.
hills area. Because
I just wanted to clarify that.
No, that's just, regional water systems, we call them in our association. They're bigger systems.
Most of those systems, like Rapid Valley, they probably have their own equipment. Rapid City does.
Right.
But these are smaller water systems, community water systems.
The city of Rapid City does have their own back, and one day I got a phone call from Chip.
Yeah.
They tried to start their back, they couldn't get it started, so they had to bring ours to help.
Yeah.
So we.
It's a small
Rapid City
community.
also.
Yeah. Any more discussion on the motion?
I just wanted to point out in our policies, it says all projects over 5,000 require 2 votes. So if we go with 5,000, I'm assuming this will only require 1 vote.
I did explain to Kurt that it may take 2 votes, and he said that was fine.
And I don't know
also.
if this is considered a project. I would assume it would be.
I would, well,
Just wanted to point that out.
we do have that policy about, are you aware of that, or? Okay. Dan?
I'd like to take the position that we'd ought to match the contribution by West River Water Development District, and so I support the initial $7,500 motion, and I'll vote against the $5,000 motion specifically because of that. I clearly support the idea, but I'd like to support it at $7,500, even if it takes an extra meeting.
Yes, Nathan.
I'd like to revise my substitute motion to $4,999.99.
Is that okay with the second?
I don't think
I'll
second.
Linda second. It's just a friendly amendment, then we can change it.
Good.
So
Just to avoid any issue, I don't know.
It does say over 5,000.
Okay, if we can do 5,000, then I'll keep my original one.
Okay. Let's vote on that. All in favor of the substitute motion to spend $5,000 for the hydrovac for South Dakota Rural Water, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Right?
Motion carries, $5,000.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 8.
Is done.
Oh, yeah.
Item number 8 is done.
Let's throw in number 9 then.
Item 9
Yes,
is
Mr.
mine.
Dick.
It's postponed from the last meeting, and I'll actually roll it into items 10 and 11 if that's okay with the chair.
Sure.
So I'll take just a couple of minutes to introduce the topic. We discussed it at some length at our last meeting, so I can keep it pretty short. The concept is that West Dakota would essentially sponsor a meeting that would have, of the public, that would have two primary purposes. First would be to invite ideas from other water-related entities in the Black Hills area, not proposals, but just ideas for things, topics, projects that might be of interest to West Dakota for participation, collaboration, funding, and the like. The second topic of such a meeting would be basically a meeting of stakeholders in the area, water stakeholders, to discuss how might these various entities that are involved in water-related management or other issues, how might we coordinate, collaborate, avoid duplication on water-related projects, research, etc. And so I think it would suit well to have, basically the stakeholders invited to the idea session so they could hear about such ideas, and then a discussion on such ideas, a discussion of future coordination possibilities. So with that as background, I'll basically make a motion here in a minute. The first motion will involve conceptually hosting such a meeting, but stopping short of discussing logistics. First is, will we have such a session or will we not? And if that should pass, then item 11 would involve logistics, whether or not we would get to a finish line on that. If item 10 does not pass, then it would, of course, die by default. So my motion would be that we would sponsor basically a meeting with two primary subjects, one an idea session to be followed by a stakeholder session.
Okay, the motion, you all heard the motion. Is there a second to the motion?
I'd like to make a substitute motion.
Just a second, we don't have a second.
I'll second.
Seconded by Ron. So you're going to make a substitute motion?
I'll wait for discussion.
Okay, any discussion on the motion? Nathan?
I guess I go back to my comments from the last meeting that, even though there's a suggestion that this isn't about trying to find projects, I think that's exactly what the purpose of this is, and I don't think that's what our job is here, to try to find new ways of spending taxpayer dollars. I think our job is to consider things that come before the board to see if they're worthy of spending taxpayer dollars on, not to go out and solicit them. So I would not support this.
James?
I have several problems with this. The first is, if we schedule a separate date, we have to actually change the bylaws to amend the meeting schedule and amend the number of meetings we're going to have, which means we also have to publish it. So before we even get to that, you're talking about publishing, changing two bylaws.
I think we can have special meetings. The board can call special meetings.
Right, but you would have to change the bylaws because our meetings are set at a number of 12. If you want to call another meeting, you have to actually go in and change the bylaws to say we're going to have 13 meetings.
I don't think we do.
It's
No, not
in
for
the
special.
bylaws
I don't
for
believe
how
that's-
many meetings we have. It is.
But it also says in there you can have call special meetings.
Yeah,
But then you would have to advertise it, you would
Yeah.
have to
We'd want to do
pay
that,
for the
I'm sure.
venue.
Yeah.
The other problems with this is you're talking about specifically excluding any other organization or person that's not invited, which is, by reason of insanity, not open government. You're talking about closing a group to a specialized special interest group. The third thing is, if somebody wants to coordinate with different people, They have this new device. It's called a phone. All you have to do is pick up and talk to these people. There is nothing preventing you during your work day, your office hours, your lunch schedule, from talking to these different organizations, not in a meeting. I'd ask you not to make contracts with them, but by all means, get their ideas, pick their head of what's going on. But to say we're going to close the public out of a meeting because we want to talk to the big boys, you might as well just stick a lobbyist in here and tell us what to do from now on.
We'll see what Mr. Driscoll has to say about that.
I don't recall saying anything about excluding anybody. I think this would have to be open to the public. I think the intent is open to the public. I think we would be specifically get out an invitation to people who may have ideas for topics. I think we would want to invite, all entities that have an interest in water, but I think we would want to hold it as a public meeting where the entire public would be welcome to attend. I had no knowledge that I intended to be exclusive.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
I'll let Bob go first.
Dan, can you give us a list of the stakeholders you envision? And for me, the stakeholders are anybody that pays taxes into this area. So they're automatically stakeholders. So do you have a short list already?
I actually do have. I handed out such a list last week or at the last meeting, and I didn't bother to bring one along. I'll see if I have. So my intent would be to invite entities who are involved in water management sort of topics, and so I had broken it into federal, state, local, and others. At the federal level, Bureau of Rec, Bureau of Land Management, Ellsworth Air Force Base, National Park Service, National Resource Conservation Service, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, U.S. Forest Service, U.S. Geological Survey. State level, Department of Ag, DENR, Game Fish and Parks, School of Mines and Technology. Local level, City of Rapid City, any other cities in the area, Pennington County, other nearby counties, and of course ourselves, West Dakota, others and NGOs, Black Hills Council of Local Governments, Black Hills RC&D, Black Hills Pennington Conservation District, Black Hills Fly Fishers, Black Hills Multiple Use Conservation Nature Conservancy, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, Sierra Club, Isaac Walton, Walleyes Unlimited.
Thank you.
Who's next? Dan's you next?
Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned already that you would limit that agenda to 2 items. So any smaller individual that's waiting on a project wouldn't be allowed to speak. Their discussion time would have to get pushed back to a further agenda. Anything requiring a second vote would get pushed back. Every agency almost you listed, your job, your agency you work for, does business with, which would leave you at a conflict of interest for almost everyone you listed. Especially the USGS you're talking about inviting personally when you are employed by them.
Well, we'll let the board members speak, and then if you'd like to speak to it, I'll call on you soon here. Nathan?
So going back to Director Williams' point, I didn't hear anything about taxpayer representation anywhere in that list. All of those agencies are about collecting dollars and spending dollars, and that's what their focus would be. There would not be a good balance in favor of the taxpayer being able to sit there and judge whether or not their tax dollars should be spent on these things. It would just be a collection of people basically trying to figure out how to spend money, not how to save money.
Steve?
I don't look at it as trying to figure out how to spend money. I look at it as trying to get intelligence together, get like-minded people that are wanting to do what's best for the taxpayer. Come up with ideas. We're looking for ideas. We're not looking to lock anybody out. Everybody's invited. In fact, the easy way to do this is form a committee. Take 2 people from here, form a committee that's going to do this. We can form as many committees as we want, and they can have as many meetings as they want, and they can invite the public, they can invite whoever they want to this. It's not the long process that James had said. I've been on meetings, boards all the time. Bylaws allow you to do that. If you look at the bylaws, we can form different committees. And I agree with all the directors. You want everybody invited. So what you do is you bring some people in there, throw ideas out there. You invite the public because you want their ideas too. They may have better ideas than all those committees that you're talking about there. I don't know. You don't leave anybody out. You invite them, invite the public, and you go forward. You're looking for ideas that can save the taxpayers money or some idea that helps with the water. That's pretty simple. You're making this really complicated. I don't know why.
Yeah, I'll get to you in a second. My thought is that pretty much what Steve was saying, you know, we have all these agencies, and Dan read them off there, and quite honestly, I don't think there's anybody on this board that knows what they're really doing. And if you have, you know, if you have these meetings, at least you have an idea what their plans are for developing water resources in West Dakota Water Development area. Not necessarily a project, but what's the long-term plans for water resource development in our area? We're just a small part of what goes on here in Pennington County in terms of projects, water management, and so forth. There's a lot of different agencies, federal, state, city, and yes, I agree. I mean, we should invite any taxpayer that wants to come here and contribute. We've had some people here at these meetings that have had some pretty good ideas since I've been on the board. So that's my thought on it. Ron?
Mr. Chairman, I would be favorably inclined to have a mechanism like this be able to raise the profile of activity of our board and advocacy and, you know, interest in the community in general in Pennington County on conservation and management issues of water. You know, I think there's a small cadre of people that may know a lot about what West Dakota Water Development District is, but there may be a larger cadre of people, even in the district that I represent, that have very little understanding except for maybe little tiny snippets of things about what we really are supposed to be about. So I think making an effort to you know, gain a bigger public audience, as well as interacting with agencies or NGOs, municipalities that are already in the water business, we would go a long ways towards being more efficient with the taxpayer funds that we are charged with administering, and then also help other entities who are, you know, taxing citizens who know with the idea of doing good things about water to be more efficient as they collaborate. So we wouldn't be duplicating efforts in some cases, because as you say, all these agencies have missions. They're all doing things that may intercept at one point in time or another, but no one really knows about that. So we're spending money maybe 2 or 3 times over from the taxpayer that we only needed to spend one time. So I'd be supportive of an effort to get a wider participation and catalyze these discussions as part of our real mission as an advocate for water management in the Pennington County area.
Okay, thanks. Bob?
Thanks, Dan, for putting that list together and giving it to us. One of the things that I like about Steve's idea of small committees, in the past we haven't been given any authority to actually represent the West Dakota Water Development District outside of our areas as in looking for ideas. But if it's a small committee that's been approved by the board, intelligence gathering is half the problem is already done. Outside of talking with the stakeholder, or I'm sorry, the taxpayers, Dan has excellent sources, I'm sure, for contacts where a small committee could possibly work with him to get the names and the phone numbers to set up something where 2 or 3 people from the board can go and see and listen to what their currently working on. You know, you just pick and choose who to go talk to, like the DNR or the feds. We've already done that, Mr. Chairman, with the sewer treatment plant and the water pumping station. Those activities within Rapid City, that was only just you and I, and maybe a couple other members selectively that wanted to know more about the sewage treatment plant, and it seemed to be very valuable. I like that committee idea. And then one of the responsibilities on that committee would be to report back to us during regular session, you know, and tell us what we discovered. Is there funding? Are there projects that are out there that they're already doing? Like with the sampling efforts, if there's going to be more sampling efforts. We created the first sampling effort on Rapid Creek. The second one kind of got, you know, just got bigger. But talking with the city. So my point is just that gathering information through a small group, you know, and maybe we could take turns so we're not all stuck on the, you know, contacting those places. But, you know, I like the idea of gathering more information from those groups that Director Driscoll has. Talking to them.
Okay. James.
Everyone on that list just about has been to this board. They're not oblivious to our existence. And if we're going to have separate meetings to invite all these people, then why do we go to the hydrology conference? Why do we go to the legislative session? Why do we go to the different water board meetings? That is where we're doing exactly what he says. We don't need another step to do the things that we're already doing. And it just seems like, number one, he wants to invite his employer out here. I don't know why that isn't a conflict of interest right there on the spot. That should have been declared right off the bat.
Steve.
You know, going back to what Bob said, you know, when I was on city council, we had a committee called the 2012 committee. Now it's called the 2020 committee. Mm-hmm. And everybody in Rapid City knows what that is. And what you do is you bring everybody from in Rapid. You have certain people we would contact. We had a committee, and they would contact certain people who had ideas, and they'd bring them to the big meeting. And we'd have everybody show up. All the council members would be there because we did. We went out and we said, we are going to have this meeting. That's after the committee had gone out and talked to some of these entities, which come before the council day in and day out. That has nothing to do with the point that we're trying to do here. We're looking for ideas, and as Bob said, sometimes, or I think Ron, that you got different groups going and doing the same thing. Well, if you have these big meetings and you invite the public and you have these ideas out there, and then we as a group look at all those ideas, and kind of like this little point right here, but we handed out, that we look at these ideas and say, which one would save taxpayers money? Which one actually follows our mission? Regardless of whether we see these guys once a year at a legislative meeting or whatever, that has nothing to do with this idea. We're trying to generate new ideas, bring things that people don't know about, or maybe coordinate, as Bob was talking about. And I think that's part of our job. The reason we're elected is to do what's right for the people in our area. Just sitting waiting for people to come to us, that's not why we're here. Anybody can sit here and wait for somebody to come to you. We're actually going to be proactive and go out there and say, what can we do for the taxpayers? How do we save them money? Are we saving them money for one? So I guess I would support this. I totally disagree with some of the things that have been said here, because we are leaving nobody out. Regardless of whether he works for somebody, they can still come here. It's not a conflict of interest unless he's somehow making money from that, bringing them here. So that word going out there tells me somebody doesn't know what a conflict of interest is. That's not a conflict.
Mr. Chair.
Dan.
2 quick points. One, we can have committees and meet with other entities anytime, but my real interest is to get them all at the table at the same time. The second point is I'd like to hear if there's anybody in the audience that might be agencies that might participate in such a meeting and what their thought might be. I'd said at the last meeting, West Dakota really doesn't have a dog in any fight in the water world, other than it happens that we have money that can be allocated towards water things. But it's all these water, other entities that work with water that we're really supporting, and that's one of the things I really want to accomplish is, see who the stakeholders are, what are their thoughts, what are their priorities, and get everybody talking at the same time. So I'd like to, hear if there are any such entities in the audience and what their thoughts might be.
I know you've been waiting, and we've had some dialogue here, but go ahead. Could you stand up and identify yourself for the records so we get you on the audio?
I'm Barry Buxton of Rapid City. I'm a member of Dakota Rural Action and the Black Hills Clean Water Alliance, both interested in clean water. We would love to have such a thing like that. Speaking for them, even though I can't, I'm going to. I would be there because it's an incredible opportunity to synergize everybody's thoughts, reach a common consensus, and get something done.
Thank you. Joanne?
Joanne
get you
Morris,
next.
South Dakota Geological Survey, and Dan specifically talking to me as well, being a state agency. He has had a couple of these meetings over the last 6 years. I've been to 2 of them, where he's gotten these federal, state, local entities together, and really all they're doing is they're telling us what they do. And me, myself, I get so involved in doing my work, I have no idea what anybody else is doing. And so when they give us a summary of some of the highlights of what they're working on, it gives us ideas and also kind of helps us coordinate that, oh, they're working on this, maybe we could work together. And so it actually is a good idea. Just the meeting itself, just getting all these different entities together. I would include NRCS and the Weather Service too on that list.
I've got NRCS, but I'll add Weather Service.
Yeah, because Melissa Smith is good on those.
Water all comes out of the sky, all of it that I've ever seen.
Thank you, Joanne. Now, could you stand up and identify yourself?
My name is Brian Dale. I'm here on behalf of the RCD. I'll switch hats for a minute and speak on behalf of the Greater Dakota Chapters Fire Club International, for which I'm past president. Over the course of the year, we have funded, in the last 20 years, almost $500,000 in projects locally. We've never been involved with a water project, but because of our bylaws and how we're structured, it's certainly something that we would have an interest in. We've had discussions on riparian areas, water usage, and those sort of issues, and the Greater Dakota Chapter would be very interested in participating in something like this, with the potential of possibly funding projects within the limits of what our funding would be available.
What was the name of the organization again?
Safari Club International, Greater Dakota Chapter of Safari Club International.
Thank you.
Could you spell that?
Dakota, D-A-K-O-C-E-T-H, the old territory.
Dakota, you said, okay.
I'm Bob Druckery.
Oh, he's not done.
Bob, just a second. We're trying to get the name of his organization. Just 1 second.
Greater Dakota Chapter.
I can't, I'm sorry, I can't hear.
The Greater Dakota Chapter.
Safari Club International.
Thank you.
Safari, okay.
Which is a worldwide organization funding numerous educational wildlife conservation projects.
Okay. Thank you for your comment. Now, Mr. Druckery.
Sorry, I didn't hear you. I didn't cut you off. My wife says I didn't hear any of
So, Bob, would you identify yourself?
Yeah. Bob Druckery, I supervise environmental programs for the Water Reclamation Division of the City of Rapid City. We'd certainly be interested in participating. Our job is keeping Rapid Creek cleaner than the law requires, and anything more we can learn about the dynamics helps us do our job better and maybe even more effectively. So
okay.
We'd definitely be interested.
Well, you're familiar with what we're kind of proposing. I think if we could have a couple more partners, I think maybe that would move forward. But right now, it's a couple $100,000, and we've had a long, lengthy discussion about it here, and Mr. Williams was kind of the lead guy on it, and I think the money, the $200 money kind of scared some of the board members here, because we get a couple $100,000 a year, so our money doesn't go very far with a larger project. So I know the city was gracious enough to offer $50,000, and maybe since you're here, and we had asked for $100,000, half of it, and I know you guys didn't have something budgeted, but we're trying to get maybe another partner or so get some more money so we don't have to spend as much money out of our pocket. So if that's something the city's interested in, we'd be glad to go back and write Bob and meet with him again. And you can send that up the chain if you like. Okay, Steve.
And again, this is one of those discussions where we don't have a motion on the floor, we're just pushing it out. Another two.
No, I made a motion.
Yeah,
I made a motion to have such a meeting, and it was seconded by Mr. Coe.
So we're getting
what I'd like to do is propose a substitute motion where we charge Dan with putting a detailed plan together that we can vote on. So I have him put it together and bring it to us that we can actually vote on the program. Because right now it's just, everything's on hold in the air.
I'd like to repeat my motion so it's clear that first was to conceptually vote on whether or not we would have such a meeting, a yes or no. If it's a yes vote, then we would determine the logistics on how do we go about it. And I don't know exactly how I would make such a motion, exactly what I'd propose, but, I think for starters, just go with the initial motion of yes or no, do we have such a meeting or not? And if so, then we could move on to, I could certainly suggest as my next agenda item to have a...
Call a question then.
Okay, question been called. Question been called.
We have to vote on whether you're going to stop questioning at this time before you can call the question.
No, I call the
No, he
question.
called the
You
question.
call the question, but I still have a question. So if you want to call the question and make a vote, you have to actually vote to stop questions.
Right, that's calling the
That's
question.
calling the question.
So I called the question, so I got to vote.
So we got to vote on calling the question. Dan?
Could I ask, when you said your original motion, you said with the two subtopics, and I think you stated A and B in the agenda. I just want to make sure I have that down right.
So one primary topic would be a listening session for ideas, to invite ideas, a listening session. The second primary topic, basically a stakeholder group to discuss, what different entities are doing, how to collaborate, how to avoid duplication.
Thank you.
Can I ask?
Okay, we're going to vote on calling the question, which is on the table. So all in favor of calling the question indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign?
Nay.
No.
Roll call.
Harris,
Aye.
Bialotta,
Nay.
Mack,
Aye.
Williams,
No.
Rollinger,
Aye.
Jovic,
Nay.
Driscoll,
Aye.
Bierke,
Aye.
Coth.
Aye.
We have 6, so that's 2/3 vote.
Okay.
Call the question carries.
So now we're going to vote on Dan's motion.
Correct.
All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign?
Nay.
No. This is the same 3. Hence? Nathan, you voted no?
Nay.
Okay, so there's three nays and the rest ayes. Motion carries.
So Williams, Jovic, and
By a lot.
Okay. Motion carries.
So, Mr. Driscoll, where does that put us on the agenda here then?
Well, that covered number 10, and then number 11 would be to address the logistics of such a meeting. And I'll probably stop short of making a motion, depending on what the chair prefers.
I'd like to have a motion of some sort so we can have discussion.
I motion to send it to committee.
Just a second, just before that,
I made the motion.
You made a
I
motion.
had asked Tom for,
I was gonna make the same motion, so.
okay,
There was a motion and a second. You couldn't stop there.
Well, he had his hand up first, so I identified him first to make the motion. So,
Motion's on
so
the
Tom made the motion. Who seconded?
Actually, I'll second James's motion.
Okay, James made the motion, Tom seconded.
Yep.
And the motion is,
Send it to
To a
Send it
committee,
to committee.
Okay.
set up a committee to decide
Okay.
the details.
Is there any discussion on the motion?
I'm supportive of addressing it in that fashion.
Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Nay.
One nay from Nathan.
Okay.
Motion carries.
So then we need volunteers for committee.
Okay,
I'll certainly volunteer to lead it since I've been pushing the concept.
so we're forming a committee. So far we have Dan Driscoll. Anybody else volunteering? Committee of one.
I'll do it.
Oh,
I mean, I'll work.
okay. Bob, that's a committee of two.
Let's have a third.
I would say probably three.
No more than 4.
If nobody else will do it, I'll do it. I got time. I'm retired.
Sounds good.
So Bob,
Yep.
Dan Driscoll, and Dan Bierke.
Is there time for discussion? When is time for discussion about what,
On the committee?
yeah? Because I think it needs to be defined what we're gonna talk about
At this meeting?
at the meeting, or during the committee. Dan, you have, you've thought about this a lot, and can you provide what we'll talk about at the committee, kind of a rough understanding?
Right now?
Yeah.
Sure, and at the last meeting, I had circulated like a draft email that we could send out, pretty easy to send an invitation. You know, we obviously have to have a time and a date. You know, I think we'll probably have to bring that in front of the board. I don't know if it might be appropriate to ask the board, now for some thoughts on how do we really approach this. My main thought would be that we would hold such a meeting in lieu of one of our regular meetings. Basically call it a special meeting and cancel a regular meeting. You could just trade a meeting. It would seem that our bylaws could accommodate such a thing. I guess that would be my first thought on how to do it. And beyond that, I've certainly got a list of people, we've worked with in a similar ad hoc group around the Black Hills, a couple new names that have come up here tonight, but I think it's, as easy as picking a date and a time and a location and get the word out.
Okay. Dan?
Does that cover what you were hoping to hear about?
I'd like to get in on, we would finalize a group from your list and possibly contacts that you're aware of, that we would have a list and then allow Dan and, the committee members to divvy up visiting each of those stakeholders for their input on, is this a good idea or not a good idea? Would they be interested or wouldn't they be interested? And it would be something we could divide up as committee.
That probably represents a change of direction from what I'd have in mind. I would simply send an email to these people and tell them, here's this meeting we're having, and please come to it, and please, if you know of anybody else that might be interested in attending, please let them know.
So your thought is just to have a separate meeting in lieu of one of our regular meetings that are scheduled for this year?
Point of order. We voted to send this to committee. This discussion should be taking place in the committee. We're off our agenda.
Okay.
That's what I was getting
Okay.
at, Steve. The only thing I would ask the committee of is to limit to organizations that operate inside the taxpayer district. If they solely operate outside our district, please exempt them unless they're going to be bringing money to the table.
So
And I wouldn't suggest an only meeting. I think that was pretty clear during the voting process that they said they wouldn't change it to an only meeting. I suggest that we put it as an agenda item, and we can have a limited meeting, but I would not kick another group out to hold that agenda item.
I'm not sure I
I
understand.
think what he means is if we have other agenda items that were scheduled for whatever month, if it's next month or June or whatever, that we would take care of the business.
If there's critical business that needs to be done,
Yes, that's what I mean.
we would do so.
Okay, I think that's what you were asking.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's-
Well, we can certainly consider that at the
Okay.
committee. It doesn't seem unfavorable. My thought would be to keep it as limited as possible, but that's not unreasonable.
I think we understand what most of the members here of the board want us to do, so I think we'll move on to the next item. Number 12, change the location of the May meeting to the School of Mines. Linda Harris.
South Coast School of Mines has penciled us in for a meeting room for our May 14th meeting, subject to our vote tonight if we want to have our meetings there. Dan has looked at the classroom and thought that it would be workable for us. The charge would be $25, and it's in the chemistry biology building, and I do have a map here if somebody wonders where that is. It's on the east side of campus.
There is a photo in your packet there.
I would move for approval.
Okay, Steve made a motion to approve the change the meeting to the School of Mines. Is there a second? Seconded by Ron. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Did you have a question, Mr.
Oh,
Malala?
I did. I probably need about an hour to set up. Is that doable?
That was doable. She
Okay.
said absolutely you could come in at 5 o'clock.
Okay.
Very good. Item number 13, Graduate Women in Science National Conference, sponsorship funding request. Again, Linda Harris.
What my notes on that.
Make a motion to deny.
Second.
She wanted to,
That's fine, you can
do a substitute motion.
You can discuss now.
Is there,
Okay, I guess I wanted to make a motion, and then if there was a second, to follow up with a brief comment. If I could do that.
you can do a substitute motion, because we have a
Well, you got
motion.
discussion to discuss right
Yeah,
now.
we're in discussion now.
Yeah, we
There's
can
a
discuss,
motion,
Okay.
it's been seconded.
Go ahead, you have some discussion? Well, you can make a substitute motion too, if you'd like.
Okay. At our meeting in March, we discussed the National Graduate Women in Science Conference, and Dr. Lisa Kunze was present to answer questions. A couple of the directors did have some comments, not in favor of sponsorship, and that was fine. But I thought that since a request was made for funding, I wanted to make a motion that we do sponsor the conference in the amount of $150.
Is that a substitute motion?
That's a substitute motion.
I second.
Seconded by Dan Driscoll. Any discussion on that, on the substitute motion?
This is not a water science conference. This is a limited conference of only graduate women. And if we even look at the people in your office, Dan, we have plenty of people who are undergrads in the science field who work in the water industry, and they won't even be represented. So why would we take this finite small group that isn't based on water and give them taxpayers' dollars? We're not a charity. I think everybody thinks we're a charity. This is taxpayers' money.
Dan?
I think it's all part of being part of the community that we support science-related activities such as this. Thank you.
Nathan?
I've been ignored several times tonight, so please, if I raise my hand, don't ignore me.
I haven't ignored you.
Actually, you have.
There's other people. I have not.
Actually, you have. There have been several times I've raised my hand that I haven't been able to chime in, so I don't appreciate that. The other thing that I don't appreciate is I view things like this as being highly discriminatory. I don't think we have any business supporting anything like this. If this was graduate men in science, people would be all over that. Because that would be by definition discriminatory, but for whatever reason, because it says women in it, it's acceptable, and I don't like that. We need to quit parsing out Americans into these separate groups, and we need to start looking at each other as equals, as Americans, just Americans. So by principle, I am vehemently against things like this. I don't even think a conference like this should be going on. I think if somebody wants to have a science conference, it shouldn't be limited to women or men or whatever. It should just be a science conference. So, thank you.
I'm trying to let everybody have a chance to speak, and I know
You've ignored me several times.
I know there's hands up there, several hands up at once. So I'm not. You spoke plenty of times. I have not.
You have.
Mr. Williams.
I would be against this because I don't think that, number one, as Nathan just mentioned, I'm not sure that they have a lot to do with water. And is it a water project? That's something we can fund. Does the donation fit our mission? Is this a donation of $150? Does it fit the mission? Where in the mission does it say that we are capable of providing donations for this type of an event? And if it doesn't say that, I mean, you have a board that could change the bylaws to make sure that it's there, so in the future you might have that opportunity to vote one way or the other. But my biggest problem is that it's not a real project. And are there people from that organization here? Are you representing them?
Oh, I am not.
See, and it's kind of tough to vote for something, especially that's really on the edge of what our mission statement is, when there's no representative asking for it. And thanks, I think that.
Well, we had a representative at the last meeting here, so.
But I didn't make these.
Anyway, Linda?
I certainly understand what everybody's saying, and I kind of question too. To me, it's a gray area if it follows our mission. I was looking at the conference supports science, and yes, graduate women in science, but men are also welcome to attend. And I just thought that they made a request, and we should acknowledge that and at least vote on it. And to me, this is going to help me learn too. If the consensus is, no, this doesn't fit, great, now we all know.
I see one hand, James.
You know, I've had hunting groups ask me for money to teach children how to track in the woods. And I told them, how does that affect water? And they said, well, it doesn't. Well, I said, well, if you want me to go to the board and tell them that we're going to teach kids to track in the woods, but we're going to do it with water money, you're out of your mind. I mean, you can say, sure, I can run it up the flagpole, but to demand a vote because they asked you is, you know, I don't see Ellsworth asking us for money for the B-21. It has nothing to do with water, but they could be here tomorrow. That doesn't mean we have to take their request. It doesn't fit the mission at all. It's not a water science conference. It's biological, chemical, and structural engineers. That's all.
We have a request from the audience to speak.
I'm Glenda Williams, I'm a citizen. In graduate school lines, that's just an aside. But I understand women organizations, women in science. I've been involved with those for many years. But I remember this woman sitting that presented last time about this, and when she was asked, what does this have to do with water, there was no answer. It has nothing to do with water. Now, if I'm a Girl Scout leader and I want to take my kids down to Rapid Creek and show them how the water gets from here to there and then it goes into the pumping station and then it's cleaned out. That's a teaching thing, and maybe because I have Girl Scouts, it's all women. But I didn't see anything that had to do with water and what your mission and what I think your mission is, other than they could use $150 to have this conference and to support it. So I think, as a citizen, I look at this as, if you're going to ask this group for water, something to do with water, make sure it has something to do with water. And I don't know where she is tonight because it's a second vote and why she didn't come back. Maybe there's going to be one part on there that has to do with hydrology or something, but I don't hear that. And as a taxpayer, I know it's not a lot of money, but it's still like, where do you draw the line of what is acceptable to come and ask you folks for? I mean, this gentleman here works with a hunting group and a conservation group, possibly, and I can see maybe just look at their website that there's water that might encroach on hunting areas, on land in eastern South Dakota, where my pheasants might get washed out. So I want you to control the water there or something. But people need to present information to you that has to do with what your mission is with water. And I understand feeling good we're part of the community, but I feel real good about a lot of things, but it doesn't mean I solve problems or help those parts of the community that have nothing to do with water. So just as a citizen, I'm hearing this conversation. I hear $150 for a conference that's just for women, but it has nothing to do with water. I would say that I wouldn't support that, and I don't think you guys should support it either.
Thank you. Tom?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to call the question on the substitute motion.
Okay.
Second.
Let's vote on that. All in favor of calling the question, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. So we're voting on the substitute motion to fund the $150 for this conference, the women's conference.
So an aye is to approve funding, just so everybody's clear.
Correct.
That's correct.
$150, right?
$150. Everybody understand the motion? All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Say
Nay.
Nay.
Nays take it, motion fails. Thank you. Item 14. Appoint a committee to write an RFP for legal services. Mr. Cole.
Yeah, I just have a couple of brief comments and I'm going to make a motion.
Okay.
So I appreciate all the work that both Mr. Jaspers and Mr. Mullally did to kind of give us some background and history on kind of how this transpired in the past. And so those were really valuable things. And I think even on some of the things we talked about earlier tonight about how we operate with contracts, whether it's reimbursement, how we understand the deliverables coming back to us, all would be important things that we might want to buff up in terms of maybe a standard contract document that we have with people. So I think there's some value in kind of looking forward that way, and to maybe establish an outreach for legal services to focus in on the things that we really need help on, administratively in particular. So with that in mind, I would move that we establish a committee to be composed of 3 directors and our administrative oversight with Mr. Mullally to frame up a draft RFP to be brought back to the board for future solicitation of legal services.
Okay, is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Motion is made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Nay.
Bob and Nathan, no. Rest, yes. Motion carried. Item 15, proposal for membership to Black Hills.
We said 3 people per committee.
We do need to appoint or have volunteers.
Very good. Do we have any volunteers?
I'm going to volunteer since I've been kind of in front of this one.
Good. Is
So
there,
I'll take the pie in the face as needed.
very good. Dan Driscoll?
I can step forward.
Okay. One more he's asking for. Who?
James.
James. Okay, thank you for volunteering for that. Now we're ready to move to item
I
15.
think, I'd like to do a point of order as we go forward again. If, like when Ron, when he brought up number 14, the first thing that should have been done is he moved for approval, then we vote, then it goes back to him to tell him, you know, you have it in here. First thing that should be done is a vote that we're going to do this. Then they explain what it is they want, and then we yay or nay. We're doing things backwards.
There's a short introduction.
The introduction should be in here. The first thing it should be is a vote. You should read the introduction, vote, and then it goes back to the person who brought it up. That's Robert's Rules of Orders. We always talk about, that's Robert's Rules of Orders, just so we're clear.
So
otherwise, our discussion just takes off, and then we vote, and then we take off again.
Yeah, I hear you. Your suggestion is if director brings an item that there should be a short description included in the agenda.
Detailed description.
Detailed description.
That's what we're going to vote on. And then they can give a short overview, and then the discussion follows. Otherwise, it should be down here at the end for discussion items only, so if people are here for items, they don't have to sit around and listen to us discuss for an hour.
Well, I think it makes sense.
I mean, we always talk Robert's Rules of Orders, that's why I brought it up, it's in the book.
Well, we've had other items that come up that there was, you know, there wasn't any information in the handout for the agenda that really described what the issue was. So
Right.
I would agree with that.
Could I ask a question?
Yeah.
I'm a bit lost exactly on the procedure. I thought, you know, item 14 is clear to me what the substance of it is, and it seemed like a motion came onto the table very quickly. At what point did something go wrong?
Usually when you bring up item number 14, it should be move to approve, second, move to deny, second, then you go to discussion. There's no discussion before an item is there unless it's just a discussion item. So you can't have discussion unless you've got something on the table that's been approved.
Right, there should be no discussion, but to me, maybe I'm missing something. That seems like oftentimes you need a very short minute or two perhaps to introduce the topic.
That comes in after the motion's on the table. The motion's on the table, then you introduce back to the person who made the motion, and they do the introduction.
Chairman introduces the agenda item. The further introduction is done by the.
Yeah, I think a short introduction is not out of line.
Then the motion is made.
I mean, you're like Mr. Coast.
I can bring the, if you want to follow Robert's Rules, I'll bring it for you to look at. I've done this for my whole life just about. But
sometimes on some of these lengthy projects, you have questions before it is made to a motion.
But that's where the discussion is. Your questions come during the discussion, not before
Discussion
the
between the board, but not from a presenter. A presenter is different. Usually we can ask questions of the presenter before it's discussed by the board. Usually discussion by the board.
Mr. Chairman?
Just a second.
I was just going to call the point of order so we can get on number 15.
Okay.
Kind of rolling and.
I'm gonna have Ron. He's had his hand up too.
I just want to ask for some help then, as we kind of get better at Robert's Rules, from the executive committee. So like when this item is up and I put it in, if I've done an incomplete job of really defining it, then feed it back to me and then I can do something better. So we can do the approach that you're saying with a very brief introduction and then have that, you know, fairly quick motion. I tried to do that, but I guess I didn't have enough description on the agenda item, so I apologize for that.
Okay. Yeah, I think some of these items that we've had, there's not been many that they're just an item on there. There's nothing in the agenda saying what it is, and it would be very helpful, I think, to the board members to have at least something from the director that brings it forward what the issue is ahead of time. Okay, item 15.
I move to secure a membership in Black Hills Resource Conservation and Development.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded for proposal for membership to the Black Hills Resource and Conservation Development.
Open for discussion now?
Now it's open for discussion.
Not open for discussion yet. I would like to ask Mr. Brian, yes, we've been seconded.
Yes.
Mr. Brian Dale, who is the administrative manager, is that a close enough title? Executive Director for Black Hills RC&D, as it's typically called, is here. The membership amount, is it correct, is $100 per year? And would you want to give a brief overview of, I guess to me this is an organization that West Dakota has belonged to in the future. I think our membership has lapsed, but I think it's a fit for us. And maybe you could get a quick overview of what does Black Hills RC&D do and why we might be interested. Thank you for coming.
Black Hills RC&D is a very broad-based organization with a lot of stakeholders. We deal with almost, in some cases, too broad of an issue because by our bylaws we can address multiple things: land usage, water usage, fires, land suppression, invasive species, any number of things regarding urban-rural interface issues, land usage. So it's very broad-based. But what we lack and what we're hoping this board will approve is a membership on our board. Because what we lack is somebody who has expertise in water issues. I have experts on fire, land suppression, water suppression, invasive species and plants. I have experts on rural-urban interface issues. But we don't have anybody on our board knowledgeable in water issues. And in my mind, water issues are an extremely integral part of what we should be involved in. Our bylaws specifically address water issues. But there again, in the past, we've not had anybody knowledgeable enough to really educate us and provide that input we need to involve ourselves in projects. Some of the projects we have been involved in is we're heavily involved in the Pine Bark Beetle effort. We've been heavily involved in the off-road associations and damage to the off-road usage. And most recently, we've been involved in the attempt to minimize invasive species throughout the Black Hills via the boot brush stations that are being constructed by the trailheads. What we haven't done in the past is address water issues, and I think we have to do that. We're fortunate here, we have a lot of space, we have a lot of clean air, but we don't have in this area with water. And if you don't have water, you get empty space. And I think overall the effort to preserve, conserve, and promote water development has been inadequate to meet the current needs and future needs. And those needs are only going to grow as we move into the future. Simply look at, say, Angus Ore, for example. It was completed in 1952, at a time when the population of Rapid City was less than 20,000. Nothing has been done to improve that facility or that resource since then. And populations have grown. Last figure I heard, Rapid City is 75,000. Unless we have a proactive approach and identify water issues and ways to improve that, we're going to find ourselves short in the future. Now, one of the problems I see is, right now we're getting water. And whenever we have water, people tend to forget about when we have droughts. But I will guarantee you, you're going to have another drought. And then what happens is a bunch of band-aid approaches to try and solve that problem. In the short term, and they don't solve the problem. So under the aspects of the RC&D, I would like to see us expand our role in terms of addressing those issues and being involved in those issues. And I would like to ask the board to join our organization and help us and educate us so we can be more effective in that respect.
Okay, thank you.
James. Yeah, I have some questions. I know it says you've worked with pine beetles, and when you say work, do you mean you wrote the grants for the agencies that received them?
Yes, we did.
Okay, because if I'm not mistaken, your agency is just a grant writing firm, correct?
We do grants, yes. We have done that, and under we're a 501(c) organization, So we have wrote grants for other organizations like the County Weed Test Board to run under our 501(c). But we've also funded through that grant a full-time person on staff for that pine bark beetle. His contract has ended, and that's a good example of what we need more input from. We know how to control pine bark beetle. But the problem is we funded this individual, and unfortunately we ran out of funding. Unless you keep the Forest Service's feet to the fire on these issues, it's like water. They forget about it. And 10 years from now, 15 years from now, we'll have another epidemic because the measures that needed to control that epidemic are not being adhered to because there is nobody there holding their feet to the fire.
Well, don't get me wrong, and I think fighting the pine beetles is very important. But this is another one of the situations where this firm has nothing to do with water. Their firm is not a water firm. They're not doing a water test. They're a grant writing firm that finds federal and state agencies grants and writes grants to try to secure money. And I know we had this in the past, and the reason why we stopped doing it, from what I talked to the other board members, is we never got any grants or any grants written on our behalf.
Got a question from our bylaws. To improve water, land utilization, water conservation, watershed protection, prevention, and control erosion of critical areas. To improve land and water resource for forestry, agriculture, irrigation, municipalities.
But how are you doing it besides putting it on paper?
No, I have not done it in my term. But there again, we have lacked anybody with that specific water knowledge to help us in that respect.
And when you mean help, you mean
provide us guidance, provide us expertise, provide us information, and educate us.
Mr. Chairman, I guess I have a question for our presenter.
Sure.
Do you have in your recall or records, I think I recall some things where Black Hills RC&D was real active on working with riparian landowners on Spring Creek, trying to help reduce, some of the, particularly the grazing impacts, development impacts, along the creek that contributed to some of the sediment loading that was part of the, the impairment. So I don't remember exactly the specifics of it, but I know that was part of things you did. You hired some folks to help do monitoring and work with landowners to put, projects on the ground, which is, it's on the ground, but it's directly related to water. I know it was like 5 or maybe 6 years ago, maybe before you came there.
It was quite a bit before I came there, so I cannot, I guess, knowledgeably address that, other than I know that was a project that was under the auspices of the RC&D. Put people on the ground and the riparian areas and the associated erosion that caused from livestock grazing, and kind of to protect those areas from that and the sediment buildup into the creek.
That proves my point. The only way they get into water is they can go find a grant to do it. Otherwise, if they have $1 million in grant for pine beetles, they're going to be working on pine beetles for the next 2 years. And that doesn't, this type of firm, I'm glad that they go and find projects that need to be done that the community can use. But for me to give taxpayer money to another organization that doesn't specifically do anything with water, unless somebody jumps up and decides to give them money after they find a grant and win it. If they don't win a grant or find the money to do it, they're not going to do it tomorrow.
You're correct in that respect. We are not a taxpayer-funded organization. We receive no federal dollars or state dollars in our organization. Our organization is funded mostly through our memberships and, as you point out, with grants. But that's the limitations of what our funding is. At one time, we did have federal funding, but that funding has been terminated. So, yes, we don't have that inflow of funds like that. So, yes, we have to go out and look at grants and do that. And there are grants out there that are available, and we will pursue those grants when it's appropriate, and there's a project that merits us pursuing that. But yeah, you're correct in that standpoint. We don't have the luxury of funding from an outside source.
Steve?
I like the idea. When we went to Pierre, we watched what they did up the East River, and they partnered with people, And so, you know, if we were part of this organization and we had somebody on board on that, if we come up with something like we were doing out here with the base, maybe there was somebody as a grant writer could actually look for us, we could bring the information to them. They have the expertise of doing that grant writing for us. So if we have ideas that we have, or we need a partner, I look at you as being a partner to help us get some of these things solved. And for the amount we're going to pay for it, I think that's pretty expensive, and having somebody on us out there helping spread what we're trying to do is can only help us.
I think you missed a little bit.
Just a second. I'm gonna have Nathan. He's got his hand up.
Good job. I've got a question for you. Do you have like a short list of the entities that you've helped? What would be examples of those?
Well, the Off-Road Riders Association is the most recent one. We finished a campaign educating the public on proper use, off-road etiquette, you know, stay on the trails, stay off the trails when they can be damaged. That was in partnership with the off-road users and Forest Service and Game Fishing Parks. My Pine Bark Beetle was a partnership of Forest Service, Game Fishing Parks, weed pest people, various landowners that were having issues in that respect. So we have partnered with a number of different groups at the time when there's a stakeholder in this project we can undertake.
Dan?
I've got two questions for our guest. First one, you've been referred to as a firm. This seems like a bit of a misnomer. Is there a better term that describes it?
We're not a firm.
An association. And are the RC&Ds, are there more of these statewide, or is there only the Black Hills?
There are more statewide, and there used to be more nationally. But as funding dried up, unfortunately, we've seen a lot of these RC&Ds go to the wayside because they lack any measurable or meaningful way to fund anything.
And my second question, I don't know that you've got a list at your fingertips, but could you provide a quick example of some of the other entities that are members?
City of Sturgis, City of Belfrouche, City of Spearfish.
Cities, counties.
Springs, counties.
Conservation districts typically, and
I'm sorry?
Conservation districts?
Conservation districts, Lawrence County, Pennington County, Meade County, Fall River County, Custer County.
Oh, wait till
Okay.
are done.
Go ahead, James.
I don't know how. I know a lot of you are familiar with grant writing, but how those funds come about is that there's a list of grants that are available. The government just doesn't all of a sudden allow somebody to write a proposal and then bada bing, they're going to give them a grant. There is an approved list of grants to which different competing associations write their grant proposal to try to win that grant, like a contract. Now, the reason why cities and counties jump at these is usually they're providing a social service that otherwise the county or city would have to provide. And if he wins a water drought inside Pennington County, this board is not getting the money. His association is getting the money to where he will hire the people to do it.
Can I address that?
Sure.
We would not. We would consult with a board like this to find the best people and the right people for that.
But we're not employers either.
But we don't ask for your input in your advice. We are not going to arbitrarily say, this guy over here gets it. No. Because we, like I said, we do not have that expertise. And so we are going to come to associations like this and say, we need your input. Where do you think this is going to be best spent and how we can best spend it to get the maximum return on your dollar?
But there will be a narrow guideline per that grant.
Depending on what the grant is, yes, the grant may specify whatever the guidelines are, and that we have one.
I will say one thing. I used to be a consulting engineer and did some projects over in eastern South Dakota with your group over there, and it was watershed protection. And similar to what Mr. Coth said about protecting riparian areas, and to me that falls right in with what we, as part of our mission, is to protect the water supply and make sure we have the highest quality water we can get in our area. And so I have had some experience with not sure particular group, but in eastern South Dakota, and it was definitely water related. And you know, we as an organization, as West Dakota Water Development District, we don't have that much money. We really need, in order to get involved with larger projects, we need to have partners. We're just like your organization. We can't fund large projects. We can do, you know, some of these studies with the School of Mines, but we get $200,000 a year. We spend $150,000 for a dredge to dredge Canyon Lake, which is for water quality. Those are the kind of projects. And I think your organization is one similar to us, and that you need partners in order to come up with enough funds to do any good in terms of protecting our water resources.
In respect to the partners, you know, individually, we have no voice. Really. We have no power. Collectively, as a group, we have power, we have influence. And I think it's in everybody's best interest to collaborate to a maximum extent to enhance our ability to influence those policies which we see beneficial to the public. So individually, no. Whether it's an RC&D or this group, or Safari Club International, individually we don't have that power. But collectively you do. Collectively politicians are going to listen to you. Individually,
sure,
they're going to give you some airtime, but they're not going to pay attention to you.
Well, there's some programs like the Swarms program that Mr. Driscoll has mentioned here a couple times. That's something that our district could use. I mean, if we have a project that's requiring a lot of money, quite honestly, we need some help from other organizations to do these projects if they meet our mission. And I certainly think that what you folks do does meet our mission. And for $100 membership, if we can help in any way, I think that's something we should be doing.
Well, and the one thing we're lacking is somebody with that water knowledge.
Okay.
So I've got a lot of people that have knowledge in different areas, but we don't have anybody on our board that has the knowledge we need to really educationally and knowledgeably address water issues. We just don't have one on that board.
All those city municipalities have no knowledge of water all of a sudden?
Well, they'll send somebody to the meeting who may not necessarily be involved in water at all. They're sending a representative from the county. His area of expertise may be urban planning or city parks and recreation. I don't know, but you know, and you get revolving members from these municipalities, not always the same person.
I think we should vote on this and just move forward.
Bob had a question.
Bob?
My comment is, can you tell me exactly what our $100 buys us and what we can tell our taxpayers about what you're proposing? Does it just mean that one of us has to then provide information for free? Are we buying that, or what are we purchasing with the $100?
Well, $100, you're purchasing a voice on our board, and you're purchasing the opportunity to raise water issues that we may not be aware of. In my time, and I've only been the executive director for approximately a year and a half, I've not had a single water issue come before our board for discussion. Because we don't have anybody on our board that is knowledgeable or has expertise in that field. So you're purchasing a voice on our board to educate us and help us be more effective and address other issues.
Do you need monthly? Excuse me.
I just wanted to thank you.
Okay. Do you meet monthly or how?
The meetings are kind of a moving target.
Oh.
In the past, we met monthly, and then they moved it quarterly, and now we're meeting bi-monthly. So our next meeting will be May 30th.
Okay. Dan?
Perhaps one last question. Are all members considered voting members?
If you were a Duke member.
Right. I can't vote unless, we can't vote, but if we have a representative there, if we're a member, we have a seat at the voting table.
Yes.
Okay. I think we'll go ahead and...
Mr. Chair, I do have one question about that.
Okay, go ahead.
Usually, the board as a whole votes how members are allowed to address public committees and voting. So if one member went and voted and the rest of the board disagreed with how they voted, how do we resolve that?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
If I might address that, I think that's beyond the motion. My motion is whether or not to join. If we would join it, we could certainly point who might be the person that could attend, or we could sort that out later. But I think first we decide whether or not we join this organization, which I think the utility is very clear for this group.
Okay, let's go ahead and vote on the motion to have $100 for membership in Black Hills Resource Conservation Development. All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. No from James. Motion carried. Thank you for coming. Yeah, James. No. Okay, that moves us to item 16.
Number 16 is one of mine. In your director's packet, page 28, there is a one-page summary. This was provided last month as an example of what might be basically a format for an idea paper where people could bring ideas to the type of meeting that we approved earlier. This one is specifically regarding formation or development of a stakeholder group. This would be, agencies, entities in the area for formulating a SWARMS proposal, that being a proposal to the State Water Resources Management System to comprehensively address water quality issues along Rapid Creek. Issues such as the ones that Dr. Kunza had talked about, another couple of proposals we'd had a couple of months ago, kind of a wide variety of issues there. So my motion is to that we would develop a stakeholder group and begin working towards what could be the formation of a proposal to take to the SWARMS mechanism, such that the real benefit there is that this would be a mechanism to allow us to obtain funding from Department of Environment and Natural Resources, which we typically don't really have a mechanism. So motion again to form a stakeholder group to look at a SWARMS proposal for comprehensive water quality issues along Rapid Creek.
Is there a second to the motion? I'll second it for discussion.
So are we talking about forming a committee? Is that what you're asking?
No, the stakeholder group would be, other entities. One entity might be Mr. Druckery here representing City of Rapid City would be an entity that would have a voice in this. Game Fish and Parks, basically the city. Well, I mentioned the City of Rapid City, Rapid Valley Water Users Group. Who are the entities who have vested interest in water quality along Rapid Creek, and a group like this would just get together and talk about, is this something that would make a good proposal to DENR? So, Joanne, I don't know that you're really that's really in your bailiwick, but is Bob Smith really the right entity? So, it would make sense right from the get-go to have somebody that's, intimately familiar with the SWARMS program. So that's the sort of group that I'd look at, and I think we'd want to have at least one or two people from our group participating. Does that answer your question, Steve?
Kind of.
I think there's several groups that have
Just second.
I guess, you don't have a specific project in mind, it's just in general to talk about Rapid Creek water quality and potential projects to look at that closer?
I don't have a specific proposal in mind, but conceptually the process. So, Linda, you probably are familiar, and I know at least several people are familiar with the Black Hills hydrology study that had been done. So the primary funding entities for that, it was a 25-25-50 arrangement. 50% of the funding came from state and local entities. 50% came from U.S. Geological Survey, the co-op match. So of the other 50% that was state and local, half of that, or 25% total, was secured from DENR through the SWARMS program, and a proposal went to them for that. The other 25%, the locals, West Dakota was the lead entity for that, but this was many years ago. Van Lindquist was the director. He had worked with the other counties around the area, basically affiliated through the Black Hills Council local governments. So basically Butte County, Lawrence, Meade, Custer, and Fall River had joined in that effort. So through that mechanism, different entities anteed their funding, took it to DENR, and they provided a funding mechanism where they were able to provide. Geez, I'd have to go back and look, but I think the state contribution in round numbers tended to be $100,000 per year, $100,000 collectively from the locals, and then twice that amount from USGS. So that would be one example, I think, of what could be done. So, I guess what I'd be looking at, just conceptually, along Rapid Creek, we've got issues. Sediment, stormwater runoff is certainly one of the contributors. Obviously the bacterial issues. USGS has been working with Bob to some extent on some metals in Rapid Creek. One of the things we always lack is where can we bring state funding to the table? The two proposals with H2E and Dr. Murray there a couple of months ago. We had basically a contribution from the city of Rapid City, but we have no mechanism to bring DENR to the table. So I guess to me this is really what we need to do, is how can we bring DENR to the table on an issue that's very close to home for us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, this is starting to sound like a broken record. I thought we already decided to have a meeting where you bring stakeholders in. Why would we have another meeting to bring a different set of stakeholders in? Why wouldn't you just include these stakeholders in the meeting discussion?
Mr. Chair, may I answer?
You may.
This is not to try to invite everybody to the table. This is to develop a working group to say what specifically would be, how would we specifically start laying out a proposal to DENR. So this is one of many things that could be discussed at this broader meeting that we had approved. It's two separate things. This is one of the example of what sort of thing could you do at this broader meeting that we've agreed to have.
Nathan?
I'm going to reiterate my experiences as a federal engineer from years ago, that I recall being in more than one meeting with the Corps of Engineers predominantly, trying to convince people of the need for various projects. Basically, what was driving it was they had a budget that needed to be spent, and the perspective was it's free money to the community, right? So I disagree with that philosophy. Again, I think if there's a need, those needs get brought forward by various entities, and they get addressed as needed that way. I don't think it's our job to go out and try to find new and interesting ways to spend money, taxpayer money. I don't think we should be doing that. Thanks.
Any other discussion?
James has his hand up.
James?
I don't see why, again, this can't be discussed with a phone call, if DNR is in a position to help us with Rapid Creek funding or not. And if they're not, then it shouldn't even be an agenda item because there's nothing to vote on.
You want to comment on that?
This isn't really something that you would discuss with them over the phone. It certainly would be appropriate to, as part of this process, to ask somebody from the DENR program, would this be a good fit? I think the way to approach it would be that, there is a list of entities on page 28 that I pointed out, the last half of the last paragraph lists some of these stakeholders. Oftentimes they're similar: game fishing parks, school of mines, because of their expertise. Black Hills fly fishers have a vested interest. NRCS, Pennington County Conservation District, Black Hills RC&D, certainly. So, the real approach to it would be to, perhaps have somebody from the DENR program come and tell us, does this fit, and suggest, how might we go about doing it?
But you're missing again the taxpayers, the stock growers, the irrigators, everybody that uses that water in the creek. Why are we just going to help state agencies and federal agencies?
There's no proposal on the table, is there?
No. I think that right now he wants to form a working group to take a look at that.
But there's no,
There's,
nothing vote on,
we're
right?
not,
No, that's what I'm saying. There's
well,
nothing.
you made a motion.
Right,
Yeah,
there's a motion on the table.
What's the motion?
I made a motion that we would explore formation of a stakeholder group to talk about.
Did we have a second on that?
I second it.
Certainly.
Okay,
I have a substitute motion to table it.
second.
Then motion to table it with a second.
I seconded it.
Okay. All in favor of tabling the motion, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Nay.
Aye. Nay.
Aye.
I believe Mr.
I
Cox
voted
said nay.
against tabling.
Okay, so there's three: Dan Driscoll, Dan Bierke, and Ron Cole.
Let's do roll call.
Roll call.
Roll call.
Roll call
All right.
on tabling the motion. Coe,
Nay.
Bierke,
Nay.
Driscoll,
Nay.
Jovic,
Aye.
Rollinger,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Bialata,
Aye.
Harris.
Aye.
Motion's tabled.
Motion
The
passes.
table carries.
Motion passes through table. All right, moving right along. We are at Chair's comment. I handed out before the meeting to each one of the board members this proposed recognition of Dr. Elvis Lisenby at the hydrology conference on Thursday. This was prepared by Dr. Sawyer, who's with the School of Mines and past board member of the West Dakota Water Development District and chairman, who did a lot of work with Mr. Dr. Lisenby. I asked him to do this because I don't really know him that well. I knew him, but I didn't work with him. And Sawyer works down at the School of Mines and worked with him, so I thought he did a very nice job right up. And so I was, when we get asked to speak at the hydrology luncheon, that I was going to have Foster come up and give this presentation, this recognition, and his widow is going to be there for that recognition. So I don't know if everybody's had a chance to read it. If you see anything there that needs to be changed, just let me know. And Foster said he'd be glad to make any changes. Are you going to talk about our speech at the federal retired group? Should I?
I can if you want me to, but
Okay, I'll just wait 2 years then. Okay, that's all I've got. Any items from directors? You want to talk about that, Linda, first?
okay. A friend of mine is a member of the retired federal employees group, and she asked if I would just come talk to their group at their monthly meeting. They like to have a guest speaker. She said basically just to tell people about West Dakota Water Development District, because really many people in the public don't know about us. And then she also wanted me to comment on how I got interested in running for my elected position. And I asked Dan Bierke to join me because he could give a better perspective on some of the things that West Dakota has worked on. So we both talked about 20 minutes, but it was just in general, for me, what water development districts are, what they've done in the past, how West Dakota is managed and run and financed. And then Dan talked about some of the projects that West Dakota's been involved with. And they appreciated us being there and said they learned a lot.
They asked, it's funny because people are interested in water. You know, we don't have a lot of people come to this meeting. People out in the public are very interested in our water out here, and so there were some very good questions by the folks that were there, and it was fun to go in and do that. So thank you for inviting me, and I think they learned a few things. Is there anything for any other director? James?
I just want to reiterate that, you know, just because you're director, your only meeting time isn't today. If there's groups of people that you think would be helpful to our organization or need our help, nobody is stopping you from picking up the phone, taking emails, meeting with people. The only thing that's prevented is 5 of us meeting with them or more. So 2 or 3 of us can go and meet with people. They can tell you about their issues. They can bring solutions to us. They can bring projects to us. They can bring financial stuff to us, pro and stuff they need. That, you know, you're encouraged to go do this in your spare time. You don't have to wait for a board meeting to talk to people.
Nathan, you're first.
I would reiterate Director Bialotta's comments and applaud you two for doing what you did. I think that's the kind of stuff that we should be doing as directors. I talk to a number of people constantly about the potential project that we're looking at as far as getting water from the Missouri River out to western South Dakota here. I think that's where we should be focused on spending our money. I'll continue to say that as long as I'm a director. I think that's the purpose, one of the main primary purposes of setting up a board like this out here in a semi-arid area is to promote projects exactly like that. And so I talk about it to a number of people any chance I get, and I would encourage you folks to likewise do that and try to garner interest and partnership in advance of a potential big project like that, because we would need that if a project like that were to go. And I think that's where we would fit in. We would be the synergistic force to bring these people together for a large project like that. And then, were you going to talk about this, Bob, or did you want? Okay. Bob, and maybe Dan, you probably dug this up, and Bob glommed down to it or something, or you had a question about it, or so. Before I was a director, I was sitting in the audience and watching some of the things that were unfolding, and noticed that there seemed to be a need for some kind of objective evaluation of projects that were coming before the board. And so when I became a director, this was one of the first things that I did. And, you know, me being an engineer and very anal about things and so forth, I tried to, engineers are trained to try to take a world filled with shades of gray and turn it into black and white, and that's what this was an attempt to do. So it was designed to try to be simple, because I'm a simple guy. I like things simple. I think things that are simple work better. And so basically it just asked these 6 questions, and as a director was evaluating a project, you would have a very simple point range. It would be for each project +1 if you agree, 0 if you're unsure, and -1 if you disagreed. And so the idea there was that, you know, if it was a project that was positive, then it should be considered to some degree for funding. If it was 0 net, maybe not, and if it was negative, then it shouldn't be. So, just a tool. We haven't, I don't know that we've used it much. I think when I first came on the board, maybe we used it for 1 or 2 things as a trial. But it was dug out, and you know, since we've got a lot of new members on the board, I think that was the intent here, was just to kind of show that it's there.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, you've witnessed on at least 2 or 3 meetings where it just seemed like we were just confused as heck. The Robert's Rules of Order that we keep getting to hear from Steve are why I thought of this, or I thought this was a great idea when it was brought up by Nathan 2 years ago, was that we'd organize it so that we'd have some way of weighing between 2 projects that do about the same thing, or 2 agenda items even that seem to be following the same issue. It might help in selection for lawyers, if we pick lawyers, or if we make a selection process to come up with new admin. That was really, the admin thing was really the genesis for me, for trying to use some sort of way to help me come up with which of the 3 groups that we had at the time, which ones had the strength and which didn't have a strength. And that really is just a little brief history on this. But this was done in 2017, I think. And I want to thank Dan for digging it out of the archives, because I thought it was Nathan's project, or his write-up, and he found the one I was looking for. So once again, thank you.
Okay. Steve?
You know, on the agenda, I wasn't able to make it because I had family issues, but what I was going to do, we're there. The agenda is actually brought forward by the chairman. This group is one that decides whether that agenda goes forward or not. So the chairman is responsible for making sure things are in their order. If things aren't detailed, whatever the chairman decides, whether it falls under a votable item or a discussion item, then this group can sit down and say, well, I disagree with that because we approved the actual final. So what I'd like to see next time is when I sit down there is try to get it up so, again, items that are voting will come first. That way, public doesn't sit through us going back and forth. Discussion items will follow. The bottom line is this group is the one that approves the agenda. So no one person actually does this. The chairman just brings it forward. We as a group vote on to say, yes, that's the one we're going to go with for that particular meeting. So I'll try to help streamline it a little bit as we go along to make sure that for the public that they don't have to wait forever for their item to come up.
Good idea.
That doesn't preclude any of us from suggesting items to be placed on the agenda to the chair.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, on tonight's agenda, is there anything prior to number 17 that was not a voting item? I mean, is this agenda to me seems correct? Last month we kind of got stuck. Linda had hoped to, propose, sponsorship for the women in science, and it turned out we could not vote on that one.
14 would go to the end.
Again,
Oh, okay, 14 would go to the end.
right. When you look at it too, if it's not detailed where you have to put in there that you're going to vote in the affirmative there. So if it's the item that, listen, you brought up. When it first comes up, item number 4, he would look at you and you say, I move to approve. Second, then we start the discussion on that. It goes right back to the person who brought it up. Then you can give your, if you need to give a blurb or whatever, then discussion follows. We've been having discussions where you can't stop the discussion because there's nothing on there. That's why you have the motion first. then as a group, we can see where it goes.
So to me, that seems quite different than the ordering of the agenda. I think we're talking about two different things.
I think that, we've asked too, because I mean, a lot of the information goes to Dan, and, he doesn't know if the director brings something to the agenda, they should indicate to either me or to Dan if there's going to be action taken on that item. If there's not going to be any action discussion, then as Steve said, it needs to be down.
And you need to give the detail information. You can't just put some item up there and just name it and not have any information on it. Otherwise, that just goes down to discussion.
Executive committee, there's been a couple of items, there was nothing submitted with it. We had no idea what it was, and so we didn't know where to put it on the agenda. So if we can get that help from the directors when they submit something, just description or something. If there's going to be action, say there's going to be a request for action on that item. That would help a lot.
Mr. Director, the way I would like to suggest is that placing your name and Dan's at the top of an email with the rest of the directors as CC'd so they could see what we're doing. And then if you agree, or if there's not enough detail, people can actually, communicate by picking up the phone or sending us emails or texting or whatever it is. And that way, that's how you would build an agenda. So.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And back to kind of what you said, Dan, if you start a discussion before we have something, then we can't call, if you're going to have a 20-minute tirade, I can't call the question because there's nothing out there to call. So you can hold us up for as long as you want, telling us about what you think we should be doing or what you want to do. If you put it up there first and we're done talking, listen to you talk for 15 minutes, then we can say, I'm going to call a question.
Well, I understand that. We want to get the motion there right away, but to me, how the agenda is constructed is a separate thing. So if what I'm hearing is when we submit agenda items, you need to provide enough description so that people will know what's going on, and you should let them know, is this a voting item or is this a more of an informational item? I mean, we can have appointing committees. There is no motion. So that should come between items from directors and after voting items and before items from directors and public.
I think that's going to help the public too, because we've had the public here on some of these items that are way down on the agenda, and had items that where there was no action taken whatsoever. And we have people in the audience that want to speak to some of these items, and they're sitting here for an hour and a half. I think that's not the way to run a business. So I think that's some good suggestions. Is there anything else from any of the other directors?
Move to adjourn.
Nope.
We got
admin and then the public that's been sitting here.
Let's go to Mr. Malawi.
The hydrology conference, of course, is Thursday, and I'll just note that at 10:30, Kurt Kazenstein, Scott Kenner, there's a presentation on the School of Mines, West Dakota Water Development District Future Use Permit Study. And I see Jerry Wright's on there. He presented to us once before. He's at 11:30. And Joanne Noyes made a nice poster for us. I don't know, is it over here? So
that's nice.
We'll have that there.
Who all is going to that, Dan?
Pardon me?
Who all?
Well, I'm going, I don't have the list. Then there's some field trips Friday.
Right. Yeah. I just wonder if we should meet somewhere and then split up, decide who wants to go to which, so we're not all in the same meeting.
There is one more item that's from us too on there for presentation in the afternoon. That's on the modeling of rapid pig drainage Deerfield Pactola that we got a presentation on.
So yeah, he sent out a new, I'm looking at an old one here. I emailed it to you guys. And then I saw on the old one at lunch it had us listed, but I'm not sure what that meant, but then we're not on the new one. I don't know if we're a sponsor for that or how that was intended.
For the luncheon, yeah.
Okay, no, I don't see it on the new one.
Oh. So we've got two items, two of our projects that will be discussed at that hydrology conference, which is good.
Okay, I guess that's all I had.
Okay, now, did you want to speak to something?
The poster, I put those cardboard things on there so you could set it on a table, but at the conference, we'll have it outside the door of the lunchroom, and Foster Sawyer has a tripod that he's bought that he'll bring.
Oh, good.
Put that right outside the lunchroom door. I do want to mention that Hobby Lobby has an aluminum one that's got expandable legs for $20. But I didn't want to spend the money that much because I wanted to do this on cheap. So
You don't want to donate that?
Thank you.
Thank you for doing that.
And
Yeah, thank you so much for doing that. It's very nice.
That's the lunchroom app that says on here. Rushmore room app.
Yeah, you might want to email Galen about that if you think that he left something off that should be on there. Just a change on that.
Okay, is there any items from the public? Yes.
Associated with the hydrology conference, there are two presentations on the beginnings of projects that have been brought at least to a couple of the directors.
Could you stand up and identify yourself, please?
Sorry. Lisa Kunze, School of Mines. Kurt Chawonsky is presenting tomorrow afternoon about his work that he did preliminary in the hills, and we've brought a proposal to a couple of the directors about what we would like to do to continue on that project, as well as there's a poster by Lucas Gronke, who is a graduate student in my lab that has also been brought to a couple of the directors. It hasn't made the agenda yet, and I'm sorry, I was at our research symposium earlier and didn't make it to the beginning of the meeting, so I'm not sure what was decided about how to bring proposals forth. But I just wanted to let you know that they'll be there and you might see it again, if appropriate.
Okay, thank you.
And like, just the
Yes,
Deerfield patch hole is at 210,
Yeah.
the one you were talking about.
Yeah, that's good. You have the floor. Identify yourself.
I'm Ernie Getty from Rapid Valley. I've been watching this thing out of Ellsworth, and I was wondering if any of the directors had any news from the base. Steve, I don't know if has anybody contacted you at all? I mean, as far as your constituents in your area about the water quality and the testing and anything, Fox Elder Creek and Cheyenne River, nothing like that. Nobody from the base has contacted.
We had one person that I sent a message over to Dan about the
Nancy Maynard?
Yeah, about the area over there by where your house is, you said, where both of you live.
Oh, that's with the Hawthorne ditch.
Yeah, that's the only thing I've ever had is a Hawthorne ditch.
That's not related to the Air Force.
Yeah, but as far as
I
the
know,
base,
I know a lot of things have changed since the last meeting. You know, they're going to get this new bomber, and I think they're going to get a lot of money. And whether they will be able to mitigate any of the water woes of some of your constituents, I don't know, but that might be something that, I don't know if the water board can assist in that in any way, but I think it's something worthy of being apprised of. I mean, they're doing a good job of having public meetings, and probably wouldn't hurt for us to continue attending those.
Yeah.
Another comment I have, I notice, Dan, you're really trying to get the community involved with the district and trying to get more people to come before the board. And I would encourage the board in general to maybe consider different ways of perhaps advertising that, either on the website or in the newspaper. I mean, this is a great forum here tonight with all these gentlemen and ladies here. And I think this is really the basic forum for projects to get started. So to look at some way of advertising on a monthly basis to encourage people to come here for School of Mines, I'd advocate for that. So.
Okay, thank you. Nathan.
In response to that, I think that's a great suggestion, but again, we've got 9 people on the board. We can all be marketers. We should all be out there talking to people. So I do it regularly. I mentioned that before. There's a lot of people that I talk to that, like has been said before, that have never heard of it. So I tell them about it and what we do and so forth. I think, that's kind of a grassroots level, and I think that's something that we should be doing. So all of us, and past directors, and people that come to the meetings.
Yeah, we ought to thank them all.
Yeah. Did you have something done?
Yeah, I think Ernie and Nathan and I were at the last meeting at Ellsworth Air Force Base. If there's a way for us to get on the schedule and have them tell us, Dan, when they're going to do these things. I know I get updates from you electronically if there's going to be a meeting. Make sure that it comes to all of us so they can get them on their schedules, because they're usually very busy. And the people that have come to those Air Force meetings, they brought 10 different guys from 10 separate entities that have anything to do with water quality and chemicals or the biology of what's going on. But we really do face a significant threat if this is a real threat. If the PFOA and PFOS at 70 parts per trillion can affect your health, this is going to be one of those projects that we need a solution for. And if we figure out a solution out here in the middle of nowhere, we can actually encourage other towns and air bases, municipal aircraft places, to help them figure out a way to clean this stuff up. It's chemically inert, which makes it really difficult to separate from the water supply. And I think in this last effort, they told us that they'd gone all the way to the connection with Rapid Creek. And anyway, big wasp. Must be getting nice outside. He doesn't want to freeze to death in the snowstorm. But what they have is Area 5 is their most recent sampling effort, and it's gone all the way to, I think, Rapid Creek or the Cheyenne River. Sorry, and that's a significant deal. If that's the case, they have more trouble than.
Yeah, it's a super fun site.
It's. I'm sorry, I'm done. Thank you.
If I could share one anecdotal thing from that meeting. When all the official facts and figures were finished, there was an impromptu, you could talk with anybody there afterward in a more casual setting. And we had the opportunity to talk to the base commander, Colonel Nichols. And he let one thing slip, and I don't know if you caught that or not. Their attitude in the past has been that the federal government is not in the position to mitigate personal loss off the base, other than providing water, which is a goodwill gesture, and perhaps hooking people up to the Box Elder water system, which they would incur a monthly bill. But he let one thing slip on Colorado Springs, if you recall. The Air Force is helping the people of Colorado Springs with this very issue, and they're using federal dollars off the base to do it, if I understood that correctly.
Yeah, and I don't recall. But I do recall them saying something
but
about stock cans.
That may be something that, there may be help for private individuals off the base through federal funding. And as I said, with this bomber coming in, they're getting a pile of money to widen, lengthen the glide path of that bomber. So trying to encourage help for your constituents in particular, in Box Elder, through government funding may be an avenue for relief.
I'd encourage you to come to the next meeting if possible, and if Dan will give us the heads up in advance.
Very, very informative.
Sounds like it. Yeah, I know it's a big issue. So thanks for
One of
thanks for
the
going to
last
those meetings.
Can I just interrupt one
Sure.
last time?
Go ahead.
It's going to get tough to get used to the new format. One of the things that they mentioned at this meeting was it did not include surface contamination or the stock dams. One of the stock growers from down east asked if they actually would test his stock dams, and they said, well, we never thought of that. There's a lot of things they have not thought of. And so broad, information sharing in this situation is one of those that will help us get a good product from this, I think.
Is the DNR attending those meetings?
I think there was one or two representatives.
We have a Superfund gal, Joanne Lambert,
That's
I
going.
think I talked to her.
You going to those meetings?
probably.
Oh, yeah, it's gonna be a
Or
super.
involved in
Yeah.
the coordination of
Okay.
everything, so.
In regard to the contamination issue, I think a lot of times, the Colorado situation, I think, was driven basically by power. So in that case, I think it was legal. I think there were many litigations that were being threatened against the Air Force simultaneously, and so I think they felt like that was probably something that they had to do. In our case, we got some pretty powerful federal legislators. I know we've got some probably activist type people here in the room, so if that's something that you feel like isn't something that is important to you, then maybe that's something that you should consider. Go and meet with your legislative representatives in their offices and tell them what you would like. So if they hear that enough from their constituents, then maybe that'll shake some money loose. This is not unfixable.
No.
It's just that it's going to take a large amount of money to fix it. So,
Is the city of Box Elder at those meetings?
I'm not sure about that. I wouldn't.
They're right there. I think
Yeah.
I'd be concerned about is, with the city of Box Elder. So, all right. Thank you for coming.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Second. All in favor?
Wait, there's another junkie public that has something to say.
Brief announcements. if I may.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Public,
You bet.
once again, very much before the Rural Action Clean Water, April 24th, right over here at this public radio studios, where do we go from here? And they'll be discussing water in western South Dakota. It's a public meeting, audience is acceptable. It airs at 11 local, and if you're interested, be there. It's a very good deal.
Where's this at?
At the public radio studios, SUTV studios.
Okay.
Right over there. And also, as you can see on the Earth Day Expo sign behind you, that's the 27th. I would encourage everybody to come. And another thing, Silver City had a meeting put on by Big Rock Exploration. They're looking for gold around Silver City, which is just a heck of a good deal. The exploration part seems to be relatively safe. They were very coy about what happened afterwards, saying, well, we're not miners, we're just explorers. But if you explore, you find something, and it's valuable, and there's enough there, miners will come. It's right at the entrance of Pactola. Some of their claims run along Rapid Creek. They're going to plan on start exploring next year. They've been up there for months, glad handing everybody, but the residents up there are less than thrilled. They're very concerned, and it's an issue to be watching, because they said it would not be an open pit mine because it's too far down. They're talking 5,000 to 6,000 feet. My question is how you retrieve that gold at that depth. And there must be a process, but I don't know what it is. But it's probably going to involve chemicals. It's probably going to involve bad things tap into our water, so just be aware.
What time was that on the April 24th? Was that
That's at 11?
11? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Dr. Williams Jardine was one of the panel members on it. That's the only one I can remember.
Okay, thank you. Now, we have a motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carried. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Who made the motion to, buy a lot of, who seconded? That somebody who.
Steve.
The lines you did. Got out of here.
You're passing.